All right, away we go here. I cannot believe it. It is, let me see here, 1, 2, 3. Yes, it is December the 11th, 2019. Just 20 more days before the end of the year. Oh, my word, where has the time gone? And, oh, yeah, by the way, we're about a month or so into the college basketball season, and we've got you. We've got you covered here. I'm Joe Raineri. He is Ralph Michaels. It is another edition of the Happy Hour Tip-Off Show powered by WagerTalk.com. Everything you need to make it a profitable final 20 days of the year right now at WagerTalk.com. And, Ralph, hell of a night last night in college, especially from you, my friend. Congratulations also knocking it out of the park, your 5% play. We'll get to it there. BYU, if you ain't paying attention, I hope you're paying attention because BYU is a legit team in this country. Well done, Ralph. Nice play last night.
Well, you know, Joe, we talked about it last week. We're getting to the period of times now where the kids were suspended for a period of time are going to now start appearing back on the rosters. Yep. And Yoli Childs was a kid who, you know, why was he suspended? It's not like he did anything wrong. Well, he did. He talked to an agent about going into the NBA. Well, right. If you're that good to go into the NBA and you talk to an agent, now you're suspended 9 games. You could damn well be sure that he's going to be a boost to that team coming back. And he showed exactly last night how much of a boost he is back. So BYU is a team to be reckoned with. You know, not only do they return Childs, who could have gone to the NBA, you know, when they got a new coach, he also brought with them the WAC player of the year. You know, and New Mexico State's a pretty good team. There's some good teams in the WAC. So to add the WAC player of the year to the mix with BYU, they'll be moving up.
Legit, absolutely legit. Of course, that was not an upset there last night, Ralph. What that was a favorite actually taking care of business. There were a couple of upsets last night, and we always like to take a look at what some of those were across the board, and we had a few of them, Ralph. In fact, 5 upsets by dogs of 2.5 points or more last night on the card.
All 5 were listed, so you see that all the dogs were 5 points or more that did pull the upset, and I was surprised with Northern Iowa, Colorado.
Hell yeah.
You know, we talked about, I really like this Colorado team. We talked about Northern Iowa having lost how many games in a row in December. You know, Northern Iowa just was the better team. Grambling beating Monroe. You know, Monroe's not a good team, but Grambling's a bad team. And the other one we talked about before we came on the air, you know, Texas Tech, Louisville. I was on that Louisville game last night, and, you know, I guess the guy knows how to still coach some defense.
Yes.
It's, you know, he's got his players. You know they're going to get better. Indeed, there's no question we knew Texas Tech was going to get better off back-to-back losses. You know, the difference is they got healthier a little quicker than I thought they would playing against them last night.
Yeah, no, they were. It was a beatdown there. No doubt about it. Louisville, of course, that game, guys, in Madison Square Garden there for the Jimmy V Classic. So impressive 70-57 win. And, you know, Ralph, it's getting to be that time of year. It's interesting. There was, of course, another upset last night of sorts. It wasn't a big, but I know a lot of people that were back in Maryland, too, last night, Ralph, thought that Maryland was going to go ahead and walk over Penn State. First road game, and you keep bringing that up. I don't know if people are listening or paying attention, guys. But these new conference games, these teams' first true road games like Maryland had last night, not as easy as people think it is early on.
Oh, it's hard to win on the road. And like I said, Penn State, you know, Penn State had a chip on their shoulder getting run out of the gym against Ohio State. So, you know, they were a fired up team anyway. And, you know, again, you have to look at first 2 road games, even if you played neutral settings, going into a bandbox like Penn State. You know, it's difficult to do, and Maryland proved. I mean, Maryland's a top 10 team, and
big time.
You know, Penn State handled them wire to wire. So it's absolutely something that is in my handicapping thoughts every time I handicap in December.
Yeah, and there were some great individual performances there, of course, last night as well. Ralph, you had Dane Goodwin there. Notre Dame taking on Detroit, had dropped 27, 4 assists, 2 steals. Fobbs at Townsend. Townsend keeps being a team, too, under the radar that we were talking about, 33, 2-1. You know, so we're starting to see, too, after a month into this, Ralph, a lot of the same teams, same names. I don't think it's any coincidence that some of these teams are a lot better than people give them credit for.
Yeah, and again, you have to take a look at the competition there. You know, you see Fitzgibbons from from Citadel, a very fast-paced team. He only played 22 minutes. He put up 25, but that was against Piedmont. But, you look at some of the numbers, and you have to, Darius Roy jumps up. You're going into Kansas.
Yeah.
You're playing at Fog, and you put up 25, 4, 3, 1 in 35 minutes. So, a lot of times I like looking at what the guys did in the losses, not in the wins when everything's going well, but those guys that can go into a place like Kansas and put up 25 points.
Yep, some of the games from last night, of course, some of those we were talking about, some of the upsets, but now some of the covers. Biggest ATS total covers here last night, right at the top in the green, guys. This Temple game was just hilarious. Temple almost had 80 points in the first half alone by themselves there. Temple St. Joe's taken down by 36, 108-61. BYU, Ralph's 5% play again. Well done there last night over in Nevada by 25. Look at that, line was 8. And, of course, Texas Tech and the Jimmy V in the Garden there. Anybody not think that Chris Beard was going to have these guys ready to go at some point here? Texas Tech, Louisville by 20 after, Texas Tech was getting 7. So impressive by those top three, to say the least there, Ralph.
Yeah, looking at the overs, okay, guys, pay attention. We've seen Notre Dame up here a few times already.
Yes, we have.
Detroit's a fast team, and, I like looking at totals in the 140s, and, I looked at using this, and I'm remiss I didn't, but, scoring 110 against Detroit, and then Northern Iowa. Well, Colorado was up tempo. I thought Colorado would have the edge controlling the tempo. No, Northern Iowa just played very well up tempo.
Yep.
Total of 126.5 goes over by 28.5. And then the Kansas game, Wilmington's not a good team at all. And Kansas just decided they needed a feel-good win, and boom, they certainly got it.
Yeah.
Winning by 28 and covering, going over the total by 25.
Interesting, very interesting night. A little over 20 games here tonight too, Ralph. And look at these under numbers too. My word, amazing! You don't see St. Joe's on there against Temple there. That's Baylor Butler too is another one of those games, Ralph. We talked about yesterday. We both liked them as a possible dog to win outright. They came close, but Baylor seems to pull things out in the end here when we'd least expect it.
Yeah, well, that was an under game we talked about as well. That was one that I did like under. So wire to wire, Butler did what Butler was supposed to do. I mean, they hung tough. Baylor got the win at home, which is not unexpected. So I think both teams take a positive out of that. Butler would obviously like to win the game, but I think going into Baylor and being in the game and losing by 1 shows that you can compete against almost anyone.
Yes, you can. And again tonight, guys, we got a little over, I believe, 21 games here on the card. We'll take a look at the markets and see exactly some of the movers and shakers here, some of the heavily bet games. We got a couple of marquee matchups that we will talk about coming up. Wisconsin and Rutgers is one of them coming to mind. There's Michigan, Illinois is another one. But there is one game that's been getting some love here, Ralph, early on, certainly from a totals perspective. How about Boise State taking on Tulsa here? It is a Tulsa team at home laying 3. The line has stayed the same, but getting a lot of love. Somebody thinks there's going to be some scoring in this game, Ralph. Opened up at 131.5. Apparently that was way too low because I'm seeing 135 now in some places. So the total getting a whole lot of love.
Well, Tulsa's one of those teams where you look at their adjusted tempo on Ken Palm and they're 328, but they're 158 on offense. The teams just struggle getting into their rhythm against them. So the opponents are very slow, but Tulsa's a team that doesn't mind getting some pace, and BYU's in the upper half either. I agree with that line move. I think the total was too low to open.
And how about this one here, Ralph? San Diego, Cal State, Fullerton, another game that seems to be getting a little bit love. Also, not only opened up at 129.5, it's being pushed up to 132. But also from a spread perspective, San Diego on the road, 2-point favorite, but I'm seeing 3.5 4s in some places. San Diego getting a lot of love here tonight.
Yeah, San Diego struggled. They come in at 4-7, and their wins. They don't have a good win. Their best win on the season against Fresno State in overtime. But Fullerton, a team that I'm going to give out some angles here in a minute that actually lean with the under, so opposite where the line move is.
Interesting. A little reverse line shift there. Nothing we don't like, and of course some of the bigger bet games as far as handle. Here's the one. There's two on the board. One of them happens to be one of the marquee games we'll focus on, but Yale, Massachusetts getting an awful lot of love here, Ralph. I mean, tickets upon tickets upon tickets. Yale, who we know can put up some points. We've talked about them a lot here over the first month. They got some guys that can shoot on that team. They can play. Man, the handle just seems to be out of this world here. 4.5-point favorites. They open. Mass is getting a little bit of money there. I'm seeing fours across the board, and also the total hanging around that 134 number there, Ralph.
So is it one-sided money or equal money?
It's pretty much Yale. Yale is getting the tickets. UMass seems to be getting a little bit more of the money at this point.
All right, so it is split. It's a game where, Yale's run off 5 straight wins, but they haven't played anybody. I mean, 0. I guess Vermont's a decent team. I mean, Vermont's your best win. After that, nobody. They lost to Penn State. Was close? Yeah. They lost to Oklahoma State. Was it close? Yeah, it was a 7-point loss. So, like you get with a lot of the Ivy League schools, I mean, they just stay all focused. So oftentimes they are a good dog because they don't get run out of the gym. They don't have those mental lapses. Right. And yeah, it makes a difference being smart kids that play basketball. You can't discount the fact that, the Ivy League schools and the schools that have, the talent when they're down, their edge is closer to being a decent team than a lot of people expect. But UMass started off the season 5-0, is dropped 5 straight games now, and a lot of it was the schedule. 5 straight wins against Sisters of the Poor, and you start playing a real schedule. What happens? You lose 5 straight.
It happens. It all evens out there in the end. And, Ralph, we always talk some trends and angles here on the show. So what do you got for us today?
Well, I've got a couple on that Fullerton game, and, Fullerton has gone 0-9-1 over under their last 10 games. So in their last 10 games, they have yet to go over 9 unders and a push. And at home, going back several years, they are now 8-25-1. Oh, yeah, and by the way, why is that money going on San Diego? Well, Fullerton's also 2-11 ATS at home, so certainly a situation. The Yale team we just talked about has covered 11 of 12. They're 11-1 ATS their last 12 games. Wisconsin, we'll talk about them in a featured matchup. Wisconsin's only 4-14-1 their last 19 games against the spread. Not what you would expect.
No.
And Tulsa 1-9 over under their last 10. And one that caught me a little by surprise, Arizona. Off a road loss, they're only 1-9 against the spread. I think a lot of times people think, well, Arizona went to Baylor and, they had a tough game. They're going to bounce back. Well, a lot of times you're paying the inflated price, and Arizona, a team that hasn't bounced back and covered those spreads after a road loss.
So tonight there are a couple of, there's some lot of double-digit dogs here, Ralph, on the card tonight. A couple of actually short dogs, a couple of Wisconsin Rutgers. We'll talk about that coming up. But was there one possible that kind of middle of the road that stuck out to you a little bit?
Yeah, I like this Boise team, and it's rare for me to go against Tulsa. Tulsa at home has given me a number of winners last year, and, I like when the big conference boys go into Tulsa because they get a battle all the time. But the situation to me looks now that, Boise to me is the better team. Tulsa's off a home loss to Arkansas State, which was unexplainable to me. I thought they would clearly win that game. They knocked off Vanderbilt earlier this year at home. But, Tulsa's a team that's played the number 351 schedule. And Boise's played the number 62 schedule. So we're getting to December. We're 8 or 9 games in. And I'm going to happily back a team that's been tested. Yes, you have 3 losses, but hell, your 3 losses were to Oregon, UC Irvine, and New Mexico. Good teams, but you've been battle tested. You've gone on the road. Excuse me. You've won a road game at Pacific. Not a great place to play, but at least you've won a road game against the Tulsa team, again, with the second weakest schedule of the 353 teams.
You know, it was funny. One of the games, one of the long shots, so to speak, Ralph, that we've talked about in the past. One of the ones that I threw the way was Pepperdine getting a whole lot of points against that Arizona team, because it's interesting. The Wildcats, one of these great teams, you know, in the Pac-12. We know this; they can score. You know, they're just flat out ballers. However, you had just mentioned it there. Very interesting trend that goes in there. Nebraska Omaha getting 19.5 and 20 points here in some places in this game here might just be a little bit too much. The 9-1 record includes an awful lot of close games, let's face it, and sometimes the lesser competition, teams trying to, like Arizona, maybe sleepwalk a little bit. And the Mavericks, to me, I like them getting 19.5, 20 here in this game. They've had a handful of close games already. I think this is a win for Arizona, but I think this is a lot closer than people are going to think than the 19.5 points that they're going to be getting.
Joe, let me throw one more reason to back your play up. Oh, yeah, today is Wednesday.
Mm-hmm.
Who do you have on deck at Saturday coming into town? Oh, that would be Gonzaga.
There you go. Yep, that's exactly. And they looking ahead. I love the look aheads too, as well. Always my favorite there. All right, so we got some dogs here on the card, Ralph, and also we like to talk situational. So, is there, you know, maybe a look ahead you just mentioned? Is there another situational on the board here tonight?
Well, it is. I'm going with basically a pick'em game. And I'm going with California. Now, a lot of times you say, I hate the word revenge, because revenge is so overused. If a team like California only won 8 games last year and you were a 10-point dog to Fresno, well, I can't say you have revenge this year because you were freaking expected to lose the game. But you know, I still think it's one of those big brother, little brother type situations when Fresno State plays Cal.
Mm-hmm.
Mark Fox, again, the guy has proven he knows how to coach. You know, his first year at Cal, took off last year, spent all those years at Georgia, 8 or 9 years at Georgia, was at Nevada prior to that. You know, he's got Cal. This is an 8-win team last year. He's got them at 5-4. Their 5 wins all at home.
Mm-hmm.
Their 4 losses all on the road or in neutral settings. So, yes, you are playing well at home. You are greatly improved. This Fresno State team, I have down several notches. Mm-hmm. They have 2 wins on the year. They beat Winthrop and they beat a lower division team. I think there's a lot of value on Cal with the, you know, again, I can't say they have revenge because they were expected to lose. But when you get run out last year against Fresno State and you're a Pac-12 team, there's still some pride involved there. And I just think it's a great spot for Cal.
Yeah, no, it's definitely. And I believe, what was the kid's name that Fresno State, they lost him? Was it Blackwell, I think was the kid's name? He was a big part of that offense. He was kind of the ball general there. And
Noah Blackwell?
Yeah, Noah Blackwell. And, you know, that hurt the Bulldogs. That hurt Fresno State a lot. But you're right. It's a situation where they're just not good right now. There's no participation trophies. They did have a close one against, was it Utah State there over the weekend? But you know, you don't get second-place trophies, not exactly in this. So I'm kind of with you. I'm all over the Golden Bears in this one. But Ralph, a couple of marquee matchups that you've got here tonight circled. One of them being that Wisconsin team taking on Rutgers, a team that, believe it or not, Rutgers 3-0. They're on a 3-0 ATS streak against Wisconsin here. What gives, man? Like, Wisconsin don't like Jersey? Like, what's going on? Route 9? Like, what's the problem with the Badgers in New Jersey here, Ralph?
Well, you know, we talked about Wisconsin 4-14 against the spread their last whatever. But, you know, you look at them, and Rutgers is another tough place to play. I mean, you know, it's not your normal Big Ten gym. It's much smaller. And, you know, you look at those situations where you have a team that this year, you know, is 6-3. Last year, they were 14-17. But, you know, home wins, Nebraska, Indiana. They beat Ohio State at home last year. You know, they beat Minnesota at home. So, excuse me, you know, the Lewis Brown Athletic Center is where they play, and it only holds about 8,000 people. So, again, it's a different environment when you get there. You look at Wisconsin, this year, and even though they have some bigs, they're much more guard oriented than they have been in the past. Nate Rohrs is a 6'11" guy, and he is their leading scorer, but he even goes out and shoots threes as well. Here's an interesting thing on Wisconsin. They're 5-4. In their 5 wins, they've shot 39% from three-point land. In their 4 losses, they've shot 20%. So what does that mean? Is Rutgers a good team defensively against the three? No, they're right in the middle. They're 180. Rutgers also is one of the worst teams in basketball shooting the three. So, I think in the matchup, I actually lean Wisconsin a little bit to win the game, not get into the window either way. But certainly, Wisconsin has a lot of size for not being a very physical team. Their guards, everyone's 6'4" or higher. There's not many teams where all 5 starting guys are 6'4". That's a long team, but they don't play physical inside. They still shoot the threes. So, I think if they start changing that a little bit, it's going to help them down the road.
Yeah, they are also slow as ass. I mean, they're 340th in tempo, Ralph, which means if they're not shooting well, they're never going to pull away from teams. That's the other problem that they've got, that if they do have those, and you mentioned that they're not a good three-point shooting team this year, just over 30%, which is not great. They are very long. But I don't know what it is about this Rutgers Scarlet Knights team and this home court advantage they've had. They've knocked off 2, I believe, top 20 teams in the last 2 years. They did it to Ohio State last year. Seton Hall, I think, the year prior to that. There's something going on over in Jersey. I don't know if it's the water, Ralph, or what's happening, but teams in the top 20, when they get to Rutgers, for some reason, things go haywire. I will say this, though. They're a damn good second-half team, what we've seen from Rutgers. I believe they are, if they're not top 50, I believe, in second-half scoring. So whatever adjustments that they make, they tend to come out, which is what worries me about Wisconsin in this, because of the intentional tempo, they're not going to pull away. But Rutgers has, so far this year, they like to come out in the second half, and they like to run and gun, doing a pretty good job of scoring efficiency. So this is a team that, if it's close, it wouldn't at all surprise me if Rutgers pulls away and wins this in the second half.
Well, one stat to keep note of, and in these close games, it's something you need to look at when you're handicapping. Wisconsin is number 16 in the country in free throw percentage. Rutgers is 277.
Yeah, well, that's also extremely important. So, interesting game there. Game number 1. You do have another game listed over here, Ralph, that a lot of people are not that are talking about here, and I'm curious to get your thoughts on everybody's darling here this year. Michigan on the road, though. Illinois. Taking on an Illinois team that, they won't go away. They're a pretty tough team. Almost took care of Maryland there over the weekend. I don't know. What do you think? Michigan, are we overhyping them on the road here? Is it? Do we have a possible Illinois victory on hand here tonight?
Well, Michigan can say this. At least we have some road experience. Michigan can also say this. That road experience wasn't very good because we scored 43 points against Louisville.
That's so true.
I was on Louisville that game, and it was, again, it was your first road game. Michigan, Michigan's season is this. You played 4 absolutes. Well, you played Creighton. Okay, so 3 Sisters of the Poor in Creighton.
Right.
You then go to the Bahamas, and what do? You shoot the lights out. You shoot over 50%, beating Iowa State, North Carolina, and Gonzaga. Well, anyone could go to one venue, get hot in that venue, have guys that shoot 50%. But then what happens? You go on the road and you're not going to sniff. I believe that's the exact phrase I used. Michigan's not going to sniff 50% against Louisville, or maybe you used it. I don't know. And what happened? They exactly did it. Well, and then you get back home, and what happens? You play an Iowa team that we know can't play a lick of defense, and you score 103 points. So then the question is clearly this. Can Illinois play defense? Well, yeah, they're not a bad defensive team. Brad Underwood has them playing scrappy. This is the same Illinois team that went to Maryland last week and led wire to wire sans the last 3 seconds of the game, where they would have pulled that upset. They went to, they played Miami of Florida the game before that. They did get run out against Arizona, but that was on the road. I think Illinois can keep this close. You look at Illinois' three-point shooting; it's not great right now. But again, the home teams you've played haven't had that many opportunities. I think Illinois keeps it close. It's tough for me to say they're going to win the game, though. Without even looking at the spread. The spread's 1 point. They're the favorite. I expect them to win. And when I break down the game, I think they have the edges. But just the eye test, watching Michigan a few games and watching Illinois, it's tough for me to say Illinois is the better team, and I don't know if the home edge is enough to put me over that edge.
I will say this, Michigan 6-2 against the number in their last 8 at Illinois, so it has been a place that they have had at least some success for bettors. But, to me, I'm looking at the total in this game. I'm not fooled by Michigan's 100-point effort there against Iowa in their last game. They simply just took over that game, and then, like you said, they're shooting all over the place there. Both of these teams, both of these programs built on defense and not necessarily so much offense here. And the State Farm Center is a tough place to play. They kept Maryland, under 60 points in their first Big Ten game we talked about. I think both of these teams rank outside the top 100, Ralph, in adjusted tempo and average length of possession. So these aren't two teams that are going to run up and down and score a trillion points here. I think the number is a little bit too high at 142.5. So I lean the under in this game between these two teams.
Yeah, well, like we talked about when we were talking about Oklahoma State once, Illinois has the inside presence with Kofi Cockburn, a 7-foot kid out of Jamaica that they really, it gives them a rebounding edge, and it gives them the big presence where it makes that lane much tougher to get into and to get to the hoop.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun game here tonight. 21 in total on the card here, Ralph. So is there a best bet that you are looking at here tonight?
Well, there's always the best bet. We can't have the show, Joe, unless like Monday where there were 3 games being played. That's a different scenario. I am going to a number that seems low, but it just ain't low enough. And it's a game I talked about. It's the California game.
Ooh.
California under Mark Fox is one of the slowest paced teams. Fresno State is one of the slowest paced teams. You look at Fresno's number. Excuse me. You look at their year-to-date numbers, and you say, well, they're scoring more than this average. Why do you like the under? Well, in the games they've played, they've already played 4 overtimes. Single overtime last week against Utah State, double overtime against UNLV last week, and overtime earlier against San Diego. And then when you look at California, you look at who they played. They just played Santa Clara and San Francisco, 2 very up-tempo teams. So I think the number is probably 6 or 7 points too high, despite being a low number, because of those overtime games, because of the competition Cal played. And I love when people coming off games against faster opponents and now playing the style that they want, and they drag out all-out war. So under the total, best bet, Cal Fresno State.
I'm gonna go with an ACC team here tonight that's had a little rough go of it. I think is about to turn it on. No better way to get better with yourself, Ralph, and take on Chattanooga. I'm going Va-Tech, man. I'm going the Hokies. Started out 5-0, 6-0, I think, to start the season. They've dropped 3 straight, but when you look at schedule, Ralph, and it's one thing we talk about a lot here on this show, they've lost to Dayton, BYU, and Duke. Do we really need to go into how good those aren't sisters of the poor here? So I don't think they've lost 4 straight since 2016. So Chattanooga, it's just wrong place, wrong time, I think. They have losses to Tennessee by 12. They have losses to Florida State by 30 or close to 40 points there. So I think they're going to have a good night tonight. I think they're going to have a big night from behind the arc there from 3-point range. I think it's just Bad timing for Chattanooga to have to take on Vatech at Vatech. I'll lay the 12.5. I think they blow them out here tonight.
Hey, Joe, I've got one more point to add to your game as well.
Go.
Okay. Virginia Tech's head coach is Mike Young. Mike Young, where was he last year? Wofford.
Yep.
Who's in the same conference as Wofford? Chattanooga. He knows these kids very well.
There you go, guys. That's it. Couple of best bets, couple of dogs pointing you in the right direction, giving you all sorts of reasons to make it a profitable night in college hoops. And again, make sure that you guys head over to wagertalk.com. You got the opportunity to get over there right now, wagertalk.com. Get the Ralph's page there under the handicappers, the Cal Sports page. All plays posted there, guys, all week long. It's very simple. 5% crushed it last night, Ralph, with BYU. Make sure you're checking it out, following it each and every day. And, of course, make sure you're tailing Ralph on Twitter at CalSportsLV. Make sure you like these videos, guys. Tell your friends. Make it a profitable night. Come back and join us tomorrow. We'll recap it all. Get you ready for yet another slate of college basketball tomorrow. Ralph, good luck, my man. Enjoy the games. We'll talk again tomorrow.
Joe, talk to you in 23.